Hi everybody, today we will talk about extracurricular activities, which I think is an important part of the application process that can be at first kind of confusing because you don't really know how to make the most out of your descriptions. But I think that knowing about the tools you can use to describe your activities can really make a difference in the way they are perceived by the admission officers. So, I will give you some advice on that regard and also some information about how to make the most out of this section. I'm Gracia Jimenez. Was an Opportunity Fund Scholar during 2022 and I have been accepted into the class of 2027 of Harvard University. Here's my contact information if you want to ask me a question or something. We will start by discussing what counts as an extracurricular activity. They can be family responsibilities, for example. Maybe you have to take care of your little sibling while your parents are working, or it can be anything that you dedicate your time into. And family responsibilities are one of those things that help admission officers understand your context better. So you should include them, of course. Work or volunteering. I feel like in the volunteering section, people can get confused because in social media you see that a lot of people are volunteering in different organizations. So you might feel like you need to do that in order to get into college, and I don't think that's true. So if you want to participate in some activity related to volunteering, you don't need to necessarily do it through an organization. You can start your own project or your own campaign to bring awareness into different issues, or you can start different things, and that can be really interesting for admission officers. So don't feel like you're limited to into doing certain things and like you have to do these things that everybody's doing because you don't have to do that. Then arts or music, because extracurricular activities are not only academic related, they don't need to be only academic related things, also sports and hobbies. If you have something tangible to say about your hobbies, that would be great. But if you don't, you can always include them. Maybe you can put them on the bottom of the list if you want to include them, but don't have like a prize or you have you haven't done anything kind of formal. So that's your decision too. Extracurriculars are basically the things that you do outside of class, and they showcase your story because they show admission officers the things that you are interested in, your passions, what you like do with your free time, and what you will maybe do during your time in college. Next, we have oh, you can list up to 10 activities and up to 5 honors on the Common App. You should choose the ones that you show your passion and the impact you've had. It's a kind of a personal decision because maybe you think that this activity is really important and others disagree with you, but I think that you're the one who has to decide those things. You can also like put on the top of the list the activities in which you've had maybe more impact, you've dedicated more time into, or you have a leadership position. Because I know that for some activities you are maybe only a participant, those can go on the bottom of the list. But if you have any kind of leadership position, that could be a sign that you could put that activity on the top of the list. Your specific activities do not matter as much as the things you achieve through them and the way you present them in your application. Descriptions are everything because even if you like have done some amazing things, if you don't know how to describe what you've done, it won't like the admission officers won't understand the importance of it. And regarding what I said about volunteering, it doesn't matter if you volunteer for an organization, for like this this organization. Maybe you volunteer on your own, but you did some amazing things. You helped a lot of people. That can be important too. On the right, you can find like the things you will be asked in the Common App. We have the activity type, in which you have to select a category for your activity. It can be volunteering, art, music, dance. You have a lot of options, so you should simply don't worry so much about that. Choose the one that you feel represents your activity better in a better way. Then position or leadership description. You don't need to be the president of all the clubs you're part of, but if you are, here's like you can say it here. You can also add a little bit, like be a little bit more specific in this part. Instead of simply saying president, you could say elected president or participant and put something like one out of selected out of 100 applicants. You can also include that information in the description, but if you don't have space, you could maybe do it here. You do it on the position description part. Then organization name, you have 150 characters to include your description, so make the most out of it. Participation grade levels. Remember that you can only list activities that you've done during your high school years, so the last 4 years of high school. And if you have taken a gap year, you can also include what you've done after graduating high school. Then the others are kind of self-explanatory, but the last one, I intend to participate in a similar activity in college. Mm, I think that you won't be obliged to do what you say here, but it could give you a hint on if you are a good fit for the school. Because if you want to participate in these activities but the school does not offer them, then maybe it's not the college for you. Things to consider. Some recommendations. Use words that emphasize the actions. We will find a list in the following slide. Be coherent with the number of hours you list. Mm, because if you say that you have spent 10 hours in each of your activities, that's impossible, I think. So try to find a good estimate. Like, I know it can be difficult for some activities, but try your best to do it. Think about the order of your list and demonstrate leadership and commitment. You can do that through your descriptions as well, and the hours spent on that activity, because if you've done like this activity during all your years of high school and spend a lot of time in it, it means that it's really important to you and you're passionate about it, so you can show commitment through those things. Here you can find the keywords for descriptions I mentioned. I won't go over all of them, but remember that you should consider these words because they show active participation. Things like directed, coordinated, produced, those show that you are really an important part of that project, of that extracurricular activity. So simply take those into account and consider them for your descriptions. Use numbers to show measurable impact and emphasize selectivity. Numbers can be really important when describing things because the admission officers won't know of the importance of what you've done unless you tell them about it. And the best way to do it is through numbers, through stats. So you could ask yourself these questions regarding your activities. For example, how much money did you raise? How many members did you train? How many packages did you donate? And so on. Because that will help you really, that will help them really get an idea of the context in which you've achieved what you have achieved and the importance of it. The same goes for honors. You should emphasize selectivity, as I said in the previous slide. So here's an example of one of my honors. Juan Goñi Prize of Writing, one of three works chosen from the youth category to be published digitally. If I didn't know how many people participated in the contest, but if I had known, I should have included it because I think it's important so they can understand like how many people participated and how important it is this thing that you want that you did. I have some additional advice. Ask someone to go over your list because I know that sometimes you think that what you're writing is very understandable and obvious, but you could be surprised if you ask someone to read your list of activities and like see if they can really comprehend everything that you wrote. That can really help you see if admission officers will be able to understand your list and maybe the specific words you use or some terms. You should also take advantage of the space you have. One way of doing it is combining activities. I did this with two programs, virtual programs I participated in because I wanted to make space for other activities. So you can do it as well, for example, for Olympiads, if you participated in the math Olympiads, in the biology Olympiads, you could put them all in the same slot. Of course, you won't have so much space to describe each individual activity, but you could decide if you really want to do it, if you want to have space to describe other activities. But it's something you could consider. I'd say don't do it for every one of your extracurriculars, but you could do it once or twice in your list, and that would be more than fine. Explain acronyms because, as for advice number one, admission officers might not know what you're talking about when you include certain acronyms that might seem very obvious for you. So try to explain them, especially if you have space, or try to make space for that. Do not use complete sentences. Mm, You don't need to write, for example, I organized this. You could simply say organized this without the I. It's something very typical for the list of extracurricular activities that I've seen. So it's an option that I would say do it because you will have more space that way. Be consistent with the format you use. If you put a dot at the end of one sentence, put it at the end of all your sentences. And if you don't include the I did this in one of your activities, don't include it for any of the other activities. Those are maybe small details that show that you really put effort into your list and that you really dedicated time into making sure it was like I I wouldn't say perfect, but it was consistent. And finally, do not obsess over what you see on social media. I know that while I was applying to college, I was kind of worried because I saw that people were saying that you need to have a theme throughout your application and you need a passion project. I don't think you necessarily need any of those things. And even if you did, there's no much you can do now. I I used to be worried about that, as I said, but I don't think it's something that can really hurt your chances. I have like half of my activities were related to my intended major and half of them were not, and I was fine. Of course, if you have more time, you could start participating in more activities related to your intended major, but if you don't, you can only focus on making the most out of your descriptions. And if you really participated in certain activities because you were passionate about them, it will show throughout your application, throughout your essays, and maybe even your letter of recommendations will showcase that passion you have for your activities. So I'd say don't worry so much about that. Here's an example of one of my first drafts for one of my activities. Instagram account where I interview professionals from different fields to bring information to students in the process of choosing their career path. This is it after I I made it better. Led live interviews with 6,000 plus views with varied professionals about educational opportunities for low-income, first-generation, and/or rural students. As you can see, I included the amount of people that benefited from my project, with, which I think that is again important because it shows how many people you helped, you reached, the impact of your project. Here's another example. Sold food to raise funds for the Students' Week, created banners for school events, organized 2 talent shows and various debates along the year. And this was it after. Managed buffet fundraisers to raise $1,000 for Students' Week, organized 2 talent shows and various debates with 450 plus participants. Again, I added some numbers, some stats, the number of participants that my debates had, the amount of money we raised, because I think it's really important to show those things. And finally, remember to be coherent, but don't feel pressured to focus on just one area. Be genuine. I think that if you are genuine, you won't have to worry about being coherent because if you did what you were passionate about, what you were interested in, then your activities make sense to who you are as a person. So you don't have to worry about your activities looking like if you just did them to look good in your college application. So don't worry, work on your descriptions, but don't overthink the thing about having a theme or having a passion project because the descriptions are the things that you can control now. So good luck. Bye.